Oh my goodness, Nick. So we have the Switch 2 event happening next week, just over a week from now. We are so close, as you may know, been following our countdown series of videos. And yet, there are rumors of something, potentially big happening before then, in the form of some kind of Nintendo Direct happening this Thursday. So specifically, there have been a few journalists or other people in the industry apparently teasing something, but Nate the Hate, friend of the channel, specifically came out and stated, to stop the constant questions, yes, I've heard there is a Nintendo presentation this week. I believe it is on or around Thursday, and it'll be a Direct. But I'm not 100% certain on the format at present. So this is kind of wild. Like, we all had our, focus on the upcoming Direct, and yet there's something more happening, presumably for Switch 1, because it would have to be. Would they really even talk about Switch 2 before the blowout? Maybe. You never know, but it's very unlikely. Exactly. So, for one, do we think this is actually happening? I will throw it out there that, Nate the Hate is generally reliable, and furthermore, I have reason to believe that this actually is a thing. So, going with that, assuming, unless you feel differently, Nick, what format could this be? This whole thing is wild. Why are they having this? And can that help inform what that format actually is? Nick, what do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, so it's so ridiculous that it might end up happening. Who knows? Because I remember there was rumblings back in February of a Switch or some kind of Direct happening, and nothing happened. So we already knew about this Switch 2 Direct at that point. So it's okay, we can wait another month and a half till then. But to have one only a few days before the Switch 2 Direct, I'm like, that's just insane. I was already excited for that one. I'm more excited for... I don't know. I'm just all over the place with it. But yeah, what format could it take? I think I could see maybe a partner direct or not, maybe an indie showcase. But I think if Nintendo really wants to talk about more Switch 1 exclusive games coming out this year, I think they just make it a partner direct and sprinkle in a little Switch 1 games here and there, first party ones.
Yeah, I mean, I do think a standard direct format probably makes the most sense, because the thing is, this is such a weird situation Nintendo finds themselves in, right? Because typically when they launch a successor system, the previous system is at that point on its deathbed. No one cares about that system anymore. The sales have come to a stop. The difference with this, such as with the Wii to Wii U or the Wii U to the Switch, but at least in the modern era. But now, with the Switch to the Switch 2, the Switch is anything but dead. Yeah, sales aren't at their peak anymore, but it's still selling. Games are still selling reasonably well. And I think Nintendo realizes, hey, there's still life left in this. And not just because we already know of 2 games still on the way. First-party games being Metroid Prime 4 and the Pokemon Legends ZA. And it makes me wonder, what else could be on the way? Because I think Nintendo is realizing, at least I hope they would, that, it doesn't make any sense to cut off this massive, massive demographic, and this could be one final great opportunity of focusing exclusively on them, by showing us, of course, more of Pokemon Legend ZA and Metroid Prime 4, but also, some smaller titles that could be on the way. Perhaps in the form of, spin-offs, another Mario sports game, perhaps, or maybe, finally, Mario Party DLC?
Yeah, I'm thinking exactly that. And if we look at the year of 2017 or 2018 with the Switch 1 and the 3DS at that time, the 3DS was still getting so much support because the 3DS sold so well. So they didn't want to cut off that demographic and say, hey, no, we're just putting everything on the Switch 1. But yeah, I can see games like you said, Mario games are typical for during those years. We got a lot of spin-off Mario games. So a Mario baseball, I think, would kind of tie in. It needs to happen.
It's the last one.
Yeah. It's the last one missing. I'm just hoping that they put enough time into it that it doesn't feel like the previous sports games on the Switch, because they were lacking in content. There wasn't a lot there. They added characters later, which should have just been in the base roster. So especially with the baseball game, right? You want the largest roster possible, because what is there, 9 players playing at once on the field? There's a lot of people on the field. So it's hey, we need a large roster here.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see Mario games. I think a Kirby game is easy to place our bets on. I think
was it Robobot, I think, being...
Oh, I totally forgot about that one. Yeah, I think Robobot, which was a 3DS game being ported over, and then maybe another port or a remake of something, maybe a Fire Emblem, because we haven't gotten a Fire Emblem game since 2022 or 2023, which was Engaged. So it's been a long time since we've gotten Fire Emblem on the Switch. So yeah, those 3 games I think we could easily see spin-offs, ports, remakes coming to the Switch 1. Again, don't forget that you can play those on your Switch too.
Right, yeah, great point. It's right. Any Switch game is also effectively a Switch 2 game. It's fully backwards compatible, and that's why, the way I look at this is actually, I've been saying this before, and maybe I'm off base still, but I am hoping Nintendo treats this more of a gradual generational shift, like they did with the kind of Game Boy to Game Boy Color. Now, in that case, they ended up releasing the Game Boy Advance not too long after. But I don't think they would do that here. But I do hope they kind of replicate that strategy where you have the Switch 1 games that still work on the Game Boy Color, but then you also have the Game Boy Color exclusive games, but then you have the games that work on both, in which they get benefits on the Game Boy Color, but can also work on the black and white version. I think that'd be ideal in the case of some of these games. Like, for instance, Fire Emblem doesn't necessarily need, I think, state-of-the-art graphics, right, for its primarily top-down gameplay.
It definitely doesn't.
Yeah, and plus, games on Switch still look good from development teams that know what they're doing. Like Kirby, there is a Kirby, and I may stand corrected. It may have been Triple Deluxe that was rumored. I can't remember, one of those two, or maybe it's a combo pack. Who knows? But that makes sense for Switch as well. Like everyone loves Kirby. Doesn't need to look the best. It already looks good enough, and I think that's a game that would be kind of silly to hold back for Switch too. Because Kirby's not a system seller, I think, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, you just want to sell as many Kirby's as possible, in general, Kirby's all about duplicating himself, right? So to do that, you need as many Switches as possible. Are there any other, assuming this is a full direct, is there any other thoughts you have on possible announcements?
Yeah, I think they're going to be pretty light with stuff, right? Like I said, ports, remakes, in line with that. Other games that we could possibly see here, or I guess I should games we won't be seeing here. I don't think we're going to be seeing any Mario games, right? Like a 3D Mario or Mario Kart. That's going to be saved for the Switch. Games. Yeah, no major Mario games.
Right, mainline, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll see DLC for Mario Party or a sports title coming out for Switch 1. Again, playable on your Switch 2. But other games outside of that, I'm a big fan of the Warriors games, so I would love to see a Warriors game. And there's nice things about this, or mostly negative things about this, if they showcase it on Thursday. Or it could work in their favor, right? Because the Warriors games from Nintendo don't typically run too well on the Switch 1.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So if it does come out, it's like, hey, here's the benefits, get it for Switch 1, but playing on your Switch 2, and it possibly runs at 60 frames. Because I would love to play, Age of Calamity co-op with friends, but oh my god, is that a mess. So, that's why I'm hoping for the Switch 2.
It's like N64 frame rates, basically.
It's terrible.
Yeah. No, those are some great points there. Although, one of the things, you bringing up Mario Kart, how we won't see Mario Kart, I agree with you, but how crazy would it be? One of the things, some people were commenting on Mario Kart 9 or whatever it is on Switch 2, that doesn't look like a huge leap over Mario Kart 8, What if that's because it actually is a Switch 1 game, and they only showed it on Switch 2 via backwards compatibility? How wild would that be if it shows up at this Direct? Because, hey, surprise, it's actually Switch 1, but it also works on Switch 2.
I think a lot of people would be confused. I think if they open with that, we would be like, wait a minute, did they mix up the videos? Was this supposed to be the Switch 2 Direct? I think it would be confusing. I don't think Mario Kart would come to Switch 1. It doesn't make sense because you already have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and that game's ancient now. It's already been, it was on Wii U, and it was on Switch. So, yeah, I would just be blown away. I was like, why would this be here? It would make no sense.
No, it really wouldn't. So I'm sure we could, speculate about possible announcements all day. There's all kinds of smaller types of games they could do, more puzzle games. Nintendo late console releases often do have a puzzle focus in some cases, so that's always possible, some kind of, new or updated version of a puzzle game. But I personally, would love Mario Baseball personally. It's time, although they won't hold that for Switch 2, I'm fine with that as well. Whatever, I just need Mario Baseball is more my point. And, Mario Party DLC, that's a long shot, but having some kind of DLC, especially because that would help extend its life into the Switch 2 era as well, I think would be smart, even if it works on both systems. In fact, I think it's better for that. There is one other possibility though that has struck me, and that is, what if this is it is a Direct, but it's a game focused Direct, a game specific Direct for Metroid Prime 4.
That would be insane, and I can't remember the last game-specific Direct we got, so I mean, maybe it is time for a game-specific direct. And like you said, the rumblings don't know exactly what this could be, so maybe they want to showcase it here first and say, hey, like, this is Metroid Prime 4 running on the Switch 1, but if you stay tuned to the following week, we'll showcase it on the Switch 2. Because they are still going to be selling that game on Switch 1, but we can hypothesize or theorize here to see, we know it's going to run better or look better and play better on Switch 2, but yeah, maybe they want to showcase it there first because they did make a promise that it was coming to the original Switch at some point.
They did.
And I don't think they're going to back on that at all.
No, I fully agree with you. I mean, it at worst, it's a good thing, but I mean, it would be a cross-generational title. But I will say, thinking about in any form wherever this direct take, Metroid Prime 4 I think has to be there. Like I think that's a lock. Like no matter if it's a general direct or a game-specific direct, unless it ends up being entirely different from what I expect, I think Metroid Prime has to be there. Especially if it doesn't actually have any Switch 2 functionality, then yes, it absolutely will be here. And I will say my gut reaction to exploring the possibility that's happening on Thursday, which again I believe it is, hence this discussion. Was that, well, there goes my theory potentially of Metroid Prime 4 being a launch title, because for Switch 2, that's also backwards compatible, because why would they have this direct otherwise? But I still think there is a possibility of that still being the case. Maybe not necessarily, well, yeah, I think it's still possible. I will admit, I think it's less likely at this point to be a launch title for Switch 2, but I cannot see it not having Switch 2 functionality on some level because of the mouse feature. It just makes too much sense. You have a game ready to go at the least that makes sense to have a mouse with. Like, it's a perfect example of it, barring some Mario Paint 2 or whatever. But, I do think if they show Metroid, I think we're absolutely getting a release date here. And in that case, it's very unlikely to be, I think it's very unlikely to be, day and date of the Switch 2, but then that would reveal what the Switch 2's date is, right? So I am thinking at this point it's not going to be a launch title for Switch 2. I hope I'm wrong somehow, but I think it's just not making a whole lot of sense at this point. But again, I hope I'm wrong. But yeah.
So if you think that's the case, when do you think that this would be coming out? Because who knows, maybe the Switch 2 could come out as early as May or even June. So when do you think Metroid Prime 4 would actually release for Switch 1?
If it's not actually a Switch 2 launch title, it would probably come out, I would think the fall. Because we know it's coming out this year, I would think they would aim for the fall season. Maybe possibly late summer, but, knowing the development history of this game, may want to give it as much time as possible, assuming it's somehow not already done. So I could see that being the case. But again, anything's possible. And there is, and I keep going back and forth on this, because it does remind me of how, with Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, before they announced it for Switch, or I forget the exact timeline here, but in any case, by announcing it for Wii U first, it accidentally acted as an advertisement for the Switch, because everyone already knew that the game, they already knew about that game, so when they carried over to the Switch 2, it kind of like brought all the momentum. Sorry, I'm screwing up all my names today. It's been a long week. It's your birthday too, by the way. Happy birthday.
Yeah,
we talked about this in a previous version of this, where just there's a lot going on, our 15th anniversary, and I'm kind of like, I've been like getting very little sleep. So anyways, my point is that Breath of the Wild acted as an advertisement for the Switch. So in that case, Metroid Prime 4 could possibly have the same effect on the very condensed schedule if they end up talking about it exclusively on Switch here, but then show more of it next week during the Switch 2 event, in which case I think it would be a very, a smaller portion. Like, it wouldn't get much attention, but they already talked about it here. But it really could have that like, double whammy type energy, where it's like, wow, we're getting even more Metroid Prime 4 news here, and really help bring more hype to the Switch 2.
Yeah, so if that's the case with Metroid Prime 4, do you think we would get any other tidbits or news on any other Metroid Primes for this year, or Metroid games for this year? Like possibly like a port of like those rumors, what was it, Metroid Prime 2 and 3, or maybe even a remake of a previous Metroid game?
Oh, you know what? Yes. I actually completely forgot about this possibility. Yeah, I think this may be why they have to do this. Because they have to get Metroid Primes 2 and 3. I mean, they don't have to, but if they want to get them out there, it has to be before Metroid Prime 4, you would think. And I think a Shadow Drop is in the cards. Possibly as a pair, in which case, having it be this Thursday, and if it's not a Shadow Drop, shortly thereafter, whatever. Point is, they would need to announce that before Switch 2, I would think. And this is the perfect opportunity. So yes, I think at the least, Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 are very likely to be announced for Switch 1. Lesser possibility of some other 2D Metroid maybe a Super Metroid remake or a port of Samus Returns onto the Switch as well. But I think Metroid Primes 2 and 3 are the most likely, along with more news on Metroid Prime 4. Unless they do something crazy and they talk about Metroid Primes 2 and 3 and be like, for more news on Metroid Prime 4, stay tuned to the Switch 2, event next week, and I'd be cool with that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be crazy if they did a shadow drop of 2 and 3, because people like myself, we're still playing Xenoblade from last week. So
right, exactly.
Xenoblade last week, and then we're growing over into playing Metroid Prime 2, and then we'll play that for a few days, and then the Switch 2 event. There's just so much Nintendo going on right now, it's a little hard to handle.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we've gone from kind of like a slower period to almost too much happening right now, and they need to chill out because there's a lot already happening in real life for I think a lot of people. This week's been I'm annoyed our 15th anniversary landed on this week, especially now with this incoming direct seemingly. So yeah, do you have any other thoughts though on this direct in general? What else it could be, or anything, or what else could appear during it?
So there's been rumblings of Silksong.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, there's been rumblings of Silksong. So to have it here, would that make sense? Or to have it for the Switch 2? I think having it at the Switch 2 would make more sense than having it here on Thursday. But if you want to just tie in other first-party Nintendo games with some other, I guess, third-party games and some indie games, why not have that here? Because this is going to be a Switch 1 game, probably.
You know what? You raise a good point, actually. Or you got me thinking, because on the surface, it seems like being at the Switch 2 event would be the smarter option, assuming either is on the on the table. Who knows what's going on with this game? But at the same time, it will be competing against a lot of big news stories. The Switch 2 hardware itself, Mario Kart, whatever other games they announce, 3D Mario, whatever it is. And it's like, for the developers, is that really in their best interest? And, it may be in their best interest just to release it by itself. Like, not even be at an event, because it's big enough at this point, it will get attention. But other two events, the Switch 1 event may actually be better. Because, obviously, it'll work on both systems. Like, I'm sure they maybe will even mention that if it appears here. But also having it on Switch 1 would be, big enough as is. And I think it will be able to garner more attention here rather than having to divide that attention among a ton of other announcements. Even if it may not matter much in the long run, I think in the short term, having it at this event might be smarter.
Yeah, I agree with that. You don't want to kind of compete with, like you said, all those other news headlines from Nintendo. It's like, here's Mario Kart, here's
Right.
Switch 2, here's the release date, here's the pricing. Like, there is going to be so much focus on Nintendo and some other third-party games as well, that it would make kind of sense to have Silksong here before the Switch 2 event, to just get that out of the way. But on top of that, like, what else do you think we could see here at this event on Thursday?
I'm pretty tapped out without just making up things at this point. I mean, I don't even know. Like, they would have to provide some kind of... It's weird. Like, I feel like this is going to tell us a lot about the future of the Switch. Like, if they come out and there's really very little first party, I think that tells us that they're not treating it as a more transitional type of, or more smoother transition. They are just doing kind of like a harder cutoff once these final games get released. But if they actually do have some surprising announcements here, such as, more Mario sports games or spin-offs of any kind, or whatever, I think that could hint at a future in which, hey, they're not abandoning this platform like they have almost every other one in history besides the handhelds, and there actually could be a lot of life left in it. And I really hope that's the case, because the Switch is a perfectly viable and still solid system, and I think games still generally look really good on it, at least from Nintendo. And yeah, I think that'd be great. But I will say on the third-party front, it's probably going to slow down, as I think the Switch does struggle with a lot of those games, and I think developers themselves would prefer to have those on Switch 2 at this point, especially to capture the launch hype. So it's going to be really interesting. I think it's just going to offer, a glimpse at what the final years of the Switch may look like. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. I really think, personally, I think they're going to keep the Switch going. But again, third parties have been struggling with the hardware of the Switch. So again, if we see third parties here on Thursday, I don't think it's going to be too many. I think it's mostly going to be indies and maybe a few sprinkled first party games, like those ports or remakes. Or again, like it could just be that focus direct for Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Metroid Prime 4 one might make a lot of sense. That allows them to talk about a game for Switch 1, maybe to, really show us what this game's all about. They've shown us almost nothing yet. It's like, all we know, yeah, it's a Metroid Prime game. Yeah, we get it. But there has to be more to it, and they haven't talked at all about it, and giving it some kind of showcase to really give it a lot of attention before the attention obviously will shift to Switch 2, I think will be very smart. it'll just be curious to see if that is the case, or whatever the case may be, if they tease any kind of Switch 2 enhancements or functionality here in the lead up to the Switch 2 blowout next week. So we'll see. Yeah, I honestly don't know. This is such. I mean, I'm less sure about this than the Switch 2 event. That's a weird thing. Like, this is more confusing than anything. I don't think they've ever. I'm almost certain they've never had any two directs a week apart. I mean, I'm confident in that. I think the closest we've had is like a Pokemon Presents and a direct within a relatively short window. But this is very different. These are effectively two directs almost competing with each other.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think we've ever had one overlap so close within less than a week from each other. Maybe, like you said, maybe the Pokemon one, maybe it was a specific game one and they say stay tuned for like the following week. I remember there was a direct in 2019, of September of 2019, and then there was like a Sakurai Presents right after, but that started becoming more of a regular thing when he was showcasing characters for Smash. But yeah, having this one so close, especially to new hardware, I don't think we've ever seen this before.
There's also the point, too, that the latest rumors, the latest reports going around, and who knows what's accurate at this point, but I've been thinking it's going to be June, and those reports are backing up that the release is probably going to be June. Again, could change. We'll find out next week. So, in which case, they would still have, a couple of months without any first-party game that we know about. And I'm pretty certain they'll have something there, whether it's Metroid Prime 2 and 3, Kirby, maybe both, who knows. And this is the time to kind of get it out of the way. And also, I think, too, kind of touching, as I touched on earlier, with, I think, Metroid Prime 4 acting as an advertisement, there's also a great way of, just getting out or announcing those, what could be, or at least, some more final Switch 1 games that may not get much attention by themselves, during the Switch 2 event. I mean, for one, because they wouldn't be Switch 2 exclusive, obviously, but also just because if they held them off for then, maybe people wouldn't care as much about, say, Mario Baseball or Kirby then, whereas getting it out now, the lesser announcements, would get more attention than they would, holding them back. So,
yeah. So if this is the strategy going forward for at least this year, how do you think Nintendo is going to handle the release dates for Switch 1 games and Switch 2 games? Like, are we going to see a Switch 1 game and a Switch 2 game released in the same month? Or are we going to see a pretty large gap between those releases?
So, I think. So I think it'll be handled how they currently do on the Switch, where it's just instead of, and again, I could be way off base, but instead of just every game being Switch 2 dedicated, some of them will be cross-compatible. And I don't know if they'll change the marketing for that and like put Switch 2 icons on the newer games that work on both, Switch 1 and Switch 2. Who knows how they're going to handle it, but I think they would just fit them in the current, their current cadence for releasing games, much as they have already, only with some games being compatible on both.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, they're not going to complicate it too much.
Exactly.
I think, yeah, like you said, it's going to be like, oh, here's a Nintendo game releasing, and then in a few weeks or maybe a month, here's another Nintendo game releasing.
Right.
And you will obviously know if it's Switch 1 or Switch 2.
Exactly. Like, if it's Switch 1, like, it almost doesn't matter, because, like, it'll work on either platform. It's really the Switch 2 ones you have to make clear won't work on Switch 1. And, again, this is assuming that they are going to keep releasing Switch 1 games. Maybe everything they have to announce here will be out before the Switch 2 and won't be, it won't even be an issue at all. But I personally do hope they continue supporting the Switch. It's just a massive demographic, and I think it'd be a shame to ignore it. And I think a lot of people will be happy to be able to buy games or a platform that they already own. Because as I mentioned, people are still buying the Switch. It kind of sucks for them if they're just shutting it down effectively. And if you want anything new, gotta pick up a Switch 2. So. But that's how it has been historically before, so who knows here, Nick.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like people will still be playing Switch 1, and we have no idea how difficult it is going to be to get a Switch 2. So it makes sense to have those Switch 1 games ready while people are still trying to get a Switch 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's pretty much it for us here, Nick. Otherwise, we just go on forever predicting and coming up with things. But Nick, where can people follow you at if they want to see more from you?
Yeah, so you can check out my stuff here on GameXplain, and it's been yesterday was the 15th anniversary of GameXplain, and my birthday today. Like we said, just so much going on. If you want to check out more of my stuff, I have my own channel, which is Steftendo. That's STEFTENDO. I post stuff on there, so if you're looking for more video game stuff, go ahead, check me out over there.
Again, happy birthday, Nick, and everyone should go follow you as a birthday gift. I'll link to your channel in the description below, so check it out. Otherwise, keep it locked in GameXplain for more on Switch and Switch 2. As you probably know, we have a ongoing countdown series where every day we have a new topic for Switch 2. Today we posted Day 8, where we speculated what the next Zelda could be. Stay tuned for tomorrow for Day 7, in which we'll have a whole new topic to discuss. Should be a lot of fun. Otherwise, we'll probably see you, everyone, on Thursday for our live stream reaction of whatever this ends up being. And of course, next week, Wednesday, I believe, for even more on the Switch 2. It should be a lot of fun. I can't wait. With that, everyone, thanks for watching. We'll catch you later. Bye.